As a practical example of how INNATE works to solve our problems, as most of you know, for many years, we've had a set of Deegan tubular chimes up in our chimes tower, striking the hours. Then along come the electronic chimes, wherein a small rod with an electronic pickup amplified through the 14 loud-speaking horns up on the tower. Then the question finally arose what to do with the old tubular towers that were now of no value. I didn't know. I thought about it educationally a great deal, but I never found the solution. One night, tired, asleep, I suddenly awoke with an idea coming through. Take down the tubes and hang them around in the rose gardens. We did it the next day. Then the next question was, we had over in our home a gorgeous pipe organ. It was too bad that it was just sitting there doing nothing but entertaining me whenever Margie came over to play it. I wanted to spread the goodness of that pipe organ to those outside who would want to listen also. But how to do it, what to do, I didn't know. And another night, I suddenly woke up. The solution was coming through from INNATE. Pipe it over to the loudspeakers so they would play. So we got the radio people from WOC on the job a couple of weeks ago. So Margie will begin playing every night, beginning tonight, between 6:30 and 7. All this week and all next week. 6:30 to 7, the pipe organ music playing from the loudspeakers up on the chimes tower. Automatically, this cuts off the chimes while the music's being played. When she gets through playing, she cuts back on the chimes again, and they come through regularly. INNATE solves your problems if you'll let it do it. What is it, or that part of us, which is an idiot? What is it, or that part of us which is insane? What is it, or that part of us which is non compos mentis? What is it, or that part of us which becomes a lunatic? What is it, or that part of us which goes to sleep? What is it, or that part of us which faints? What is it, or that part of us which suffers with amnesia? Education. With education, an idiot, insane, non-compos mentis, lunatic sleeps, faints, or has amnesia. The balance of the abstract or concrete body, immaterial or immaterial, functional or anatomical, continues to use all senses, breathes, heart pulsates, digestion continues, lungs inhale and exhale, secretions and excretions work, urine and feces perform, muscles contract and relax, functions of many varied kinds continue throughout the body, such as cooling in summer and heating in winter. What does all this? INNATE. Why then does it become necessary, essential, vital, that we spend hours, days, weeks, years explaining, elaborating, magnifying, affirming and reaffirming the existence of this simple, obvious difference between innate intelligence and education? because one is denied, ignored, not known, believed or taught, preached about in sermons, and scoffed at in practice. The human race, as of now, are in a turmoil, irritated, frustrated, worried, don't know what, where, or which way to seek comfort. They are fretful, suspicious of everything and everybody. They don't know who or what to trust. Politicians are unreliable, asserting then denying relations with each other and other countries. Secret treaties are made behind closed doors, which are doubtful, questionable, compromising, and later are repudiated and broken. 3 wars have come and gone, and still no peace in sight. 20 million families have been broken by deaths. Brutality and atrocities are perpetrated without justification. At home or in business, personal initiative means little. Work like slaves and lose it by excessive taxation. Build for your heirs, and inheritance tax deducts it. All by the 3rd generation lurking in the darkness. And lurking in the minds of many is the secret thought, what's the use? Why struggle to produce a family, home, business, when tomorrow an H or A bomb may destroy it all? There is no incentive to work when unemployment insurance is at a premium. It is a drab picture. Because of this confused and unsettled state of mind, people seek an out. They want peace, happiness, security. They seek solace in religion. And even here, there is conflict. They go to church, listen to sermons, few of which give sound encouragement. It's almost all about saving your soul for eternity, in the hereafter, when you're dead. Pray now for heaven then. The whole setup seems ethereal, not practical. There is a change taking place. Here and there is an advanced thinker who writes for magazines, issues books, appears on radio and TV, such as Norman Vincent Peale and others, who bring enlightenment, tell people how to think, how to look inside themselves for intelligent guidance, how to secure more inherent power for better action, and how to solve everyday problems. All this old-time fire and brimstone, ranting and raving, and glory hallelujah stuff is going. In spite of this progressive step, there is still something missing in making practical the know-how to make possible what people beg for and need. There is something in the chiropractic innate principle and practice that can directly tie in with any religion. Inside of us is an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-natural personality. Open channels, and it will flow naturally, normally, and automatically, which works from within without guidance of any kind. If people were innate living creatures, problems of relationships between peoples and countries would be solved in a normal, healthy, natural manner. Religions are man-made, second-handed, stepped down, tailor-made to meet and fit man and his geographical, climatic, environmental, educational needs, and thanks that he needs them. If there be truth in that trite saying, the kingdom of God is within you, then chiropractic is the one internal innate knowledge that permits innate to be natural, normal, and free-flowing without being manufactured by any man or any set of men for man. Chiropractic is not a religion, but innate is the source from which man secures all which he dubs religion. The innate tenets are universal to all peoples, countries, colors, including all vertebrata, and needs no bolstering or interpretations of man for man to make it act and live and exist in fact. And that is more than anyone can say for any one religion. Notwithstanding we criticize religions as delivered to the mass of unwashed, nevertheless, this world would be much worse than it is if there were no religions, preachers, or sermons. Chaos would exist. The fear of hell makes heaven seem necessary. It serves multitudes and gives them something above and beyond to hope to and cling for. To those who use logic, reason, and fact, who want something solid to grasp and grip, chiropractic is what they have within themselves. A miracle is any physical action through matter where the abstract law which produced it is unknown, not understood, or correctly interpreted, as brought down by educated man to the level of education. Explanations which do not explain offer some mystical or religious twist for how and why it occurred at that time, place, and manner. A man is hit on the head and loses his sight. How? The same man is hit on the head again and sight is restored. Why? It is called an accidental miracle of nature. It is simple, and a chiropractor understands and explains how and why. It is not a miracle when the law in and behind sight, lost and regained, is known. To medical men, such is baffling, astonishing, because there is no law of physics, chemistry, or materia medica that explains its occurrence. Chiropractors are constantly restoring health to the sick. It is commonplace, everyday occurrence. To us, there are no miracles. They are so construed, however, by the ignorant, stimulating and inhibiting treatment of effects methods of external medical methods. When a chiropractor knows innate intelligence or approaches the footstool of correct knowledge of innate, its potentials, limitless knowledge, and capabilities, knows where, how, and why it expresses itself in and through matter. Whatever it does is the expression of an internal, intellectual, living law. Innate knows how to create birds so they fly. Innate knows how to reproduce fish to rise and lower themselves in water. Plants absorb energy from the sun so they grow. Some men now know the laws of birds and fish and are beginning to learn how to absorb energy from the sun, and in part, artificially duplicating them and making them work. Innate lives, expands, grows, restores, and reproduces. Too often we call them miracles. The abundance of what happens in application of the innate principle and innate practice to sick people tends to lessen our supernatural reaction, and oftentimes we neglect to resolve to continue with our innate message of life, health, and longevity until we have written such in an impressive way into the bodies of the public, which we too often take for granted without realizing the importance of our work. The more we know innate, the less religious miracles we see at work. Too few chiropractors have found themselves in this solution of the conflict with chiropractic philosophy of innate intelligence. Yet every time a vertebral subluxation adjustment takes place, they double-cross themselves between fact and fiction. Some so-called chiropractic schools go so far as to deny entirely any belief in innate intelligence, and then ask why we adjust vertebral subluxations and the sick get well. How? They find themselves unable to give an intelligent explanation, except to fall back on that medical, incongruous explanation that does not explain of stimulation or inhibition of reflex actions through reflex arcs by way of sympathy through a sympathetic physiological reaction. One of the best explanations of conflicts between religions is found in our article found in volume 29, Upside Down and Right Side Up with B.J. We commend this for the serious student. Further conflict is the religious concept that we can talk up to God and ask for and secure favors and think we educationally want, and talk up to God and thank Him for favors we think He grants in reply to our educated requests. The chiropractic concept that all that is good, right, normal, flows from above down, from within outward, and nothing we educationally think we artificially ask for or receive naturally increases or decreases normality of that which we are entitled to receive without asking or thanking for. During 2 world wars, you will recall, both sides asked God for victory. Our weakest link in the chiropractic chain is the lack of chiropractors' acknowledgement, knowledge, and understanding of principles and practices of innate intelligence, inherent within and internal to all living creatures. The average and usual chiropractor has been thoroughly indoctrinated, tincturated, infiltrated, saturated, exposed, and vaccinated with medical concepts of external treatments of effects, symptoms, and pathologies, framing a denial of the existence of internal innate intelligence in application to life and health. He is also clothed with the usual religious something great outside and nothing but ignorance inside, with a subconscious, non-conscious, and unconscious mind. He tries to adjust vertebral subluxation for unknown reasons why, and at the same time tries to treat symptoms by way of the medical innumerable methods stymieing each other in attaining the ultimate. If he accomplishes what he hopes, it is in spite of knowledge of why, and not because of knowledge of why. The weakest link in our professional chiropractic ranks is the lack of consistency of an all-out, all-knowing, complete unity of understanding of the all-capability of innate to live without human educated interference. Now, what we've tried to do in many talks and tape recordings, lectures, and printed books is to enlarge upon the importance of a fuller understanding of innate within in health, sickness, and restoration of health. What happens when a subluxation exists? What happens when a subluxation has been adjusted? What takes place as a result of interference to innate? And what innate alone can and does do once interference has been released? We have stressed explanations many ways. The following article is another way of proving what we have always contended is a basic fundamental of the alpha and omega of chiropractic. In 1885, an osteopath accidentally and unknowingly moved a vertebra in the spinal column of a patient. The patient got well. In 1895, D.D. Palmer accidentally moved a vertebra in the spinal column. The patient's hearing was restored. In 1953, an M.D. accidentally and unknowingly moved a vertebra in the spinal column of a patient. Health was restored. In 1954, a physical therapist does the same thing. Same result. In 1955, 1855, or 55 BC, a man suffers an accident, thus accidentally moving a vertebra in his spinal column. Whereas he was sick before the accident, after its correction, he was well. One of our leading chiropractic instructors asks this question: what is the difference between these cases and what a modern scientific chiropractor does in his office? In all instances, the vertebra was moved. In all instances, health was restored. He went on to add that the real difference was in why the vertebra was knowingly moved and intentionally how. The osteopath certainly had no idea that interference to transmission of mental impulse supply was the cause of all dis-ease. And we doubt that D.D. Palmer had any clear conclusion of this philosophy on September the 18th, 1895. The object of the M.D. in 1953 was not to correct the cause of dis-ease, but to relieve symptoms. And the same is true of his underling, the PT, the physical therapist. Above all, no man in his right mind will subject himself to the hazards of accidents and accidental injuries for the purpose of correcting the cause of an illness. Yet this process has been going on since man was created. What D.D. Palmer really discovered was a natural, internal law which operates all of man. We call this law innate. It may be that some Greek in antiquity got the idea that manual pressure applied to the spine made a person feel better. And it may be that primitive tribes learned that having their children walk up and down the spine of a tired warrior or laborer had a soothing effect. But there was no evidence that the Greeks or anyone else prior to D.D. Palmer in 1895 had discovered innate as the all-inclusive factor. The law of gravity was in operation long before the apple fell on Sir Isaac Newton's head. The law of aerodynamics was operating long before the Wright brothers flew the first plane. The law of submarines was operating long before man discovered the principles of how fish submerged. The law of innate was operating long before D.D. Palmer. But until man's conscious mind discovered these principles, he could not work with them to his intentional advantage. Why now contend that the Greeks discovered chiropractic, when in fact they knew no more about innate than they did about gravitation, aerodynamics, or submarines? Unless it be to bask in the reflected glory of the setting medical sun, why make it appear that medicine and chiropractic have a common ancestor in Hippocrates? It adds nothing to our cause to aver that some careless individual lost the known principle and practice of chiropractic amid the ruins of Athenian civilization. We can well leave the moss and the ivy to our medical brethren, and we'd better be about our business of ensuring that modern man and posterity does not lose the health benefits that flow from a knowledge of this natural chiropractic law of innate intelligence. To get a slight idea of what is going on continuously in the innate mind, think of 1,000 telephone switchboards, each big enough for a city like New York or Chicago, going full tilt, receiving and transmitting requests, questions, answers, orders, every second of all the time. How are light, sound, temperature, and all the other aspects of the external and internal world translated into seeing, hearing, feeling, and responsive action? We may not know the answer, but that such does occur is obvious, and why debate the obvious? What constitutes genius? Presumably, the highly so-called gifted person has an inborn capacity to coordinate his innate to his education. This much is certain. The wisest man, whoever he may be, did not in his educated lifetime use more than a tiny portion of the potential capacities of his innate. Perhaps William James was right and on the right track when he suggested that we live immersed in a continuum of cosmic consciousness, a world mind, a little of which filters into every particular brain and is experienced by the owner of that brain as his private mind or consciousness. Philosopher Henry Bergson went a little further. Mind in itself, he said, is aware of everything everywhere without regard to space or time. But the function of our brains is to shut out most of this, to us, irrelevant knowledge in the interest of biological efficiency. On this hypothesis, extrasensory or beyond usual or normal perception would represent a leakage into personal consciousness of some of the mental material which the educated brain abnormally excludes. How fast can a great pianist use his fingers? Scientists answered the question by taking motion pictures of Paderewski playing the swiftest of his own compositions. They made the discovery that in music, as in magic, the hand is quicker than the eye. With both hands playing at top speed, the Polish master hit 120 notes a second with each finger. He couldn't keep that up for an entire piece, but he often struck almost 1,000 keys in a minute or so, at the same time varying the rhythm and striking force in unimaginably subtle ways. The hand has sensing devices, about 5 million tiny sense organs embedded in them. They serve as built-in meters and register pain, touch, pressure, warmth, cold, and other sense impressions which INNATE interprets. Could you, educationally, build such tools to do so much? We are fearfully and wonderfully made. The human body is a chemico-mechanical organism of utmost complexity, more complicated and refined than the entire telephone system of the United States. The human heart is a pump, but a mechanism of the finest materials and design, more than anything Detroit has been able to turn out. This organ beats about 1 billion times in the first 20 years and another billion for each 20 years thereafter. With each stroke, the adult heart propels through its ventricles from 2 to 3 ounces of blood. This adds up to the almost incredible total of 14 to 20 tons every 24 hours. Its work is the incessant job of circulating blood through arteries, veins, and the 60,000 miles of capillaries. 10 to 12 pints of blood through the resting body in about a minute. A ditch digger lifting a 20-pound spade full of dirt only 3 times a minute moves 29,000 pounds, or almost 15 tons of material in 8 hours. Could you, educationally, generate this power to do these things? No educated human being could duplicate the human brain. An equivalent to its duties would need be the size of the Rockefeller Center. It would require many men, several lifetimes, to wire it from top through all the ramifications of all wires for all functions through all of its many floors. Electrical power requirements would equal the power used to supply greater New York City. Necessary cooling system would be so enormous you'd have to divert the Hudson River to supply it. INNATE not only builds such a brain over its extensive nervous and muscular system as only one part of a totality human being, but assembles all without errors, adds power to heat and cool all parts, intercorrelates their products and byproducts in their interrelationships, directs those intellectual functioning from birth to death, but restores parts out of order and repairs parts should there be a traumatic breakdown to some of its parts. And between them there are so-called medical scientists who call this innate a subconscious mind. Life is a combination, spiritual, electrical, mechanical, chemical series of actions. Chemical because of mechanical, Mechanical because of alternate muscular contractions and relaxations. Alternate muscular contractions and relaxations because of alternate flows of mental impulse energy from brain to muscles. Alternation flows are directed, controlled by innate. Continuity flow through continuity nerve to a continuity of muscular expansions at their peripheries. Without muscles, 650 of them, a human being would fail to move in parts or entirety. If muscles were removed, we would be left with skin, bones, and viscera, lifeless, motionless. Living is a spiritual, abstract, electrical mental impulse, mechanical movement, producing chemical products and byproducts. Each is coordinated, each to each other, each of which is essentially and necessary. Could you educationally produce or reproduce any one or all, make them coordinate together and produce a living body? But innate does. Innate has constructed over 30,000 miles of blood vessels. 1 pound of body fat supplies enough energy to lay 17,731 bricks, shovel 114,000 pounds of sand, or run 43 miles, which is one reason it is difficult to defeat innate by reducing fat by exercises. In the process of breathing while you sleep, innate raises the bedclothes about 1,000 times an hour. Thus, if blankets weigh 5 pounds, for an 8-hour sleep, innate actually lifts 20 tons. Your heart does enough work to lift a 150-pound man to the top of a 3-story building. By the time you are 70, innate has done enough work to lift the largest battleship out of water. By that time, having beaten 2,500,000,000 times, the heart will have pumped 61,500,000 gallons of blood, weighing 258,500 tons, enough to fill a pool 1 foot deep, 1 mile long, 1,553 feet wide. And then some people call the study of innate a cut. And some other people think pills, vitamin pills, necessary to stimulate, inhibit, or aid nature. If the innate human brain dynamo could be externally and artificially built to generate all continuous normal quantity flow of mental impulse supply for a human body between birth and death, it would take a skyscraper to house it, the power of Niagara Falls to run it, and all the water of Niagara Falls to cool it. And the medical profession still overlooks innate's ability to cure cuts, heal bruises, and get sick people well. And some chiropractors too. If you'd like to venture into the realm of higher mathematics by comparing the spinal cord to a telephone cable, a neurology instructor we know has a section of lead cable containing 380 pairs of 24-gauge copper wires to carry man-made messages both ways. It is approximately 2¼ inches in diameter. We wondered how big such a cable of wires would have to be to contain the same number of wires as there are nerve fibers in the spinal cord. But we ran into a snag when we tried to pin the instructor down to the exact number of fibers in the cord. It is known that there are at least 16,500,000, but Cryle reports there could be 400 trillion. And there are an estimated 14 trillion cells in the body also. The smaller number, 16,500,000, was easier to compute. According to our rusty mathematics, a telephone cable containing the same number of 24-gauge wires would be over 27.5 feet in diameter. Does any chiropractor conceive he is capable of fabricating a spinal cord which will precisely fit the spinal canal? Is the builder of this mightiest of all mighty productions a cut? All our heredity, our nature, is transmitted to us from our parents through tiny cells which connect our living substance with that of our forebears. Each human being takes its origin from the union of two of these bits of living matter. An egg from the mother, which has been fertilized by a single sperm from the father. The egg is a tiny sphere, hardly visible to the naked eye. It has been estimated that 20 million human eggs would weigh about 1 ounce. A sperm is visible only with the aid of a microscope, and its volume is about 85,000 times smaller than that of an egg. Furthermore, a sperm is quite different from an egg in appearance, being shaped like a thread, inflated at one end to form a head. Some idea of the sizes of these living links between the generations has been given by an eminent American biologist, H.J. Mueller, who has calculated that if we could collect together all the eggs from which the present human population of the earth has sprung, 2,200,000,000 of them, they would all occupy the volume of about 2.5 quarts. The sperm cells, 2 billions of them, would occupy the space of half an aspirin tablet. The chromosomes occupy a considerable fraction of the volume of the sperm, but only a tiny fraction of the volume of the egg. The combined volumes of the chromosomes in the 2,500,000,000 sperms and in the equal number of egg cells from which the human beings now living have sprung would add up to less bulk than 1 aspirin tablet. And yet, this minute amount of substance contained the heredity of the whole human race. Your digestive system is another one of the wonders of the body. It is so complex that its workings are still not fully understood. INNATE converts beef protein into human protein, needed for muscles and connective tissues. It changes vegetable fats and sugars into totally different fats and sugars essential to life. It does in minutes jobs what would take hours in a laboratory, or maybe could not be done at all. Digestion starts with innate in the brain. From there, innate flows digestive impulses, which begin action in the mouth. When food is swallowed, things happen rapidly, assuming innate is in contact with the afferent half of the mental impulse cycle from beginning of digestion to its end. The tongue pushes the food into the throat. The soft palate rises to seal off nasal passages. Lid-like epiglottis drops to close the air passages to the lungs. Past these obstacles, food drops into the esophagus, a 9-inch tube, and is propelled down the esophagus to the stomach by waves of worm-like muscular contractions called peristalsis. Gravity plays a little part in this. Grazing animals swallow against gravity. Man can swallow quite well standing on his head. The stomach is a secretory organ, having the incredible total of 35 million glands. The small intestine performs the ultimate task of digestive process, breaking up of foods into simplest components, passing those into the body for building and repair. Small intestine's actions are both mechanical and chemical. If inside of the intestine were smooth, it would present a surface of only 6 square feet. Not enough to absorb adequate food for our needs. But it is rough, folded, and contains approximately 5 million villi, minute hair-like protuberances. And owing to these folds and irregularities, the inner lining of the intestine presents an absorptive surface of 106 square feet, an area as large as the floor space of a small bedroom. From start to finish, the digestive process is bafflingly complex to educated man, simple to the innate that built, runs, regulates it, controls it, directs it. Educated man could not understand it, much less make it work. We physically trained and educated mortal beings take the usual for granted. George Eastman did not. He wanted to take pictures, record them on film, develop them, keep them as permanent evidence. So he studied the human eye. It plus the optic nerves, plus the brain, plus the innate, did all these things and more. In both the Kodak and eye, light from the object is focused by a convex lens, passes through a light-proof chamber, and forms an inverted image on a light-sensitive material at the back. But the human eye is far faster and more versatile than the best camera known. Self-adjusting, self-focusing, it takes both stills and movies in black and white or true colors, tints and shades, transmits them by way of the optic nerve to an innate mental brain film which develops, prints, enlarges a tiny negative to natural life size in true perception and interprets it right side up instantaneously. The eye is focused by the ciliary muscle, which changes the thickness of the lens. This innate adjustment places images of near and distant objects in true third dimension, precisely on the retina. All man can do is to artificially attempt to duplicate mechanically what innate has been doing in millions of people, millions of years, to a perfection man has never equaled. There are many exciting conditions and delicately balanced circumstances necessary for life to exist on earth. The odds against their existing in proper relationship by chance alone are much greater than your chance of coupling penny numbers 1 through 10 out of your pocket in the right order. For instance, the earth rotates on its axis 1,000 miles per hour. If it rotated at only 100 miles per hour, our days and nights would be 10 times as long as now, and the earth would alternately burn and freeze. Under such circumstances, vegetation could not live. Again, the sun has a surface temperature of 12,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and our earth is at the exact distance from it. It needs to be just enough heat and not too much. The earth is tilted at an angle of 35 degrees, and this enables us to have our 4 seasons. If it were not tilted at this angle, vapors from the ocean would move north and south, piling up continents of ice. If the moon were not at the exact distance it is from the earth, ocean tides would inundate the land mass completely twice a day. If the ocean were a few feet deeper than it is, carbon dioxide and oxygen in Earth's atmosphere would be completely absorbed, and no vegetable life could exist on Earth. If the Earth's atmosphere were a little thinner, many meteors which are now turned out in space would bombard us, getting great fires everywhere. Did this great balance of all things just happen? Nobody knows exactly what innate is. You can't weigh or measure it. And yet it directs and controls all elements and reforms them to suit its needs. The life of a frail plant cannot be seen, but it can crack a rock. Innate is a sculptor which shapes all living things, a musician that teaches birds, insects, and men to sing, a chemist which gives taste to fruit and spices, perfume to flowers, and transforms water and carbonic acid into sugar and wood, a transparent, mist-like drop of protoplasm, drawing energy from the sun, holds the seed of life, and is the mother of everything that lives, both plant and animal. Where did it come from? Whence came that mysterious innate radar called instinct, intuition, soul, that directs the young salmon which stays at sea 4 years and then comes back to the very river, to the very tributary, to the very channel where it was born? Put it down in another tributary and it will know at once it is in alien waters, and will battle its way back to its own tributary, and then up against the current until it is where it belongs. Eels at maturity go unerringly to the depths of the ocean off Bermuda, from all rivers and ponds everywhere. They come out of little obscure ponds and lakes far inland, swim down brooks, rivers, and bays to the ocean, cross the ocean, and arrive off Bermuda. Here they breed and die. Newborn eels who apparently seem to know nothing, except they are in the depths of the ocean somewhere, and who seemingly cannot communicate with each other, immediately start back for the exact river or pond from which their parents came. No American eel has ever been caught in European waters, and no European eel has ever been caught in American waters. Innate delays the maturity of the European eel by a full year to make up for its longer journey. Eels never make mistakes. Where did they get that unerring impulse? Or take the wasp. It conquers a grasshopper and stings it in exactly the right spot. The grasshopper becomes unconscious, but does not die. Then the wasp lays her eggs at the right distance from the unconscious grasshopper, so her young can nibble the preserved meat without killing the grasshopper. Putrid meat would be fatal to them. The mother, however, knows everything is all right. She flies and dies. It had to be done right the first time, or there would be no wasps in the world. Physical adaptation cannot explain such. The only explanation is they are bestowed with an innate intelligence. In Australia, a species of cactus was planted as a protective fence. This cactus had no natural enemies in Australia, so it flourished to such an extent it threatened to engulf farms and towns. An area approximately the size of England was taken over by the cactus. Entomologists searched for a natural enemy to oppose the growth of cacti, and finally discovered an insect that lived exclusively on cacti. This insect also had no natural enemies in Australia, and so was able to breed freely. The insect slowly pushed back the cactus, and today insect and cacti are in perfect balance in Australia. We see checks and balances throughout everywhere. Without them, fast-breeding germs, bacilli, parasites would long since have taken over the earth. Insects have no lungs, such as man has. They breathe through tubes, but tubes do not grow larger as the insect grows, preventing development of big insects. Without this restriction on the side of the insect's breathing apparatus, man would long since have lost his right to live. Consider for just one moment the facts and figures of the muscles of the spinal column and how important a part they play in man's upright position. With only 3 pairs of spinal column muscles, 13 on each lateral half, there are more than 67 million possible combinations of muscular contractions and relaxations producing balance. There are 144 muscles directly attached to the movable spinal column, both right and left lateral sides. To multiply the figure out to the 144th power gives us a figure beyond the grasp of any educated man. As an educated individual, could you direct these normal balances or adapt them in abnormal balances? Obviously, only innate can create balances of such astronomical possibilities of muscular combinations. There are some who deny the existence of miracles, others who maintain that the age of miracles has passed. But the truth is that all existence is a miracle, and one of INNATE's own miracle workshops carries on daily and hourly within your own body. Now, are you in this class? Let us ask this question. Every 24 hours, your heart beats 103,689 times. Your blood travels 168 million miles. You breathe 23,240 times. You turn in your sleep 25 to 35 times. You eat 3.5 pounds of food. Some speak 4,800 words. You exercise 7 million brain cells. But this last figure has us worried, inasmuch as we have 400 trillion brain cells. So the average person uses less than his potential. We'll begin there in 5 minutes.